The previous basket is under review.
Welcome into another episode of Weekend Under Review. That is Matthew Winick. I am Brian Rauf, here to walk you through what happened over the past weekend, but perhaps more importantly, on this Monday, look ahead to an absolutely loaded feast week ahead. Happy early Thanksgiving to everybody. Before we get started, I have to make sure to let you know that we are brought to you by Basket Under Review, so you should subscribe to Basket Under Review. $10 a month gets you access to all of our paywalled content at basketunderreview.com, as well as access to the Discord, which features Trillian Donovan's insights and intel. It's the best community of college basketball fans, college basketball sickos, college basketball diehards that there are on the internet. $10 a month gets you all of that. So make sure you go subscribe to Basket Under Review if you are not already. All right, Matthew. There is one result we have to talk about first, because Purdue's just 30-point drubbing of Texas Tech at the Baha Mar championship game on Friday night. There were plenty of games Saturday, plenty of games Sunday. That was the biggest, most impactful result, certainly, was Purdue's 86-56 victory. What can we say about the Boilermakers and their ability to get that done?
31-3 run. That's the game, right? That's a 28-point gap, and it's a 30-point game. Outside of that game, it was a 2-point score. That was it. Utter dominance from Purdue, but honestly, that run is sort of emblematic about Texas Tech this season, which is because they have 6 or 7 really good players, and that's it. They really only have one way to beat you, and that's Toppin's dominant inside, and shooters are spacing the floor for him so that he's not getting triple teamed. Texas Tech missing every 3 over that stretch is why Purdue went on that run. Obviously, Purdue was terrific offensively, but we've known that Purdue is the best offensive team in the country. And Braden Smith and Trey Coppin-Renner are going to be unstoppable in basically every game they play in. But they were feeding off of Texas Tech's long misses, getting out in transition, which they don't always do. If Texas Tech isn't hitting shots, they're not winning games because they don't have another way to beat you. And so while I was really impressed with Purdue, and obviously they put their foot on the gas and didn't let go, Texas Tech has to make shots. If they're not hitting shots, they're not winning games.
This was a clinic from Purdue, particularly during that 31-3 run. They did everything offensively that they wanted to do. It helped that everything was going in for a good stretch there, certainly. But they got the shots down low they wanted to get. They got the open looks from 3 they wanted to get. Fletcher Loyer was making off-the-bounce threes. That's always really nice when that happens. So I don't want any of the Texas Tech stuff to take away from what Purdue did, because Purdue played like the number 1 team in the country. The Texas Tech side of things, I think you were seeing a team that didn't know how to stop it from snowballing. And some of that is, I think this is a team that had high expectations because they returned a good bit from last year, right? But they didn't return everybody. This was the kind of game where I think you needed like a Darian Williams to kind of settle things down. That he was one who settled things down in the tournament last year when things started getting sideways for Texas Tech in that Arkansas game, right? Christian Anderson, a lot of high expectations for him. He's in a bigger role this year. He needed to kind of step up and slow things down, and he didn't. I think this will be a growing opportunity for Texas Tech. Anytime you lose by 30 points, even if it's to a team as good as Purdue, there's always something you do to make it that bad, right? It's not all the other team. But Purdue was awesome, and Purdue deserved this championship, but certainly deserved to win this game. And that 31-3 run, as you mentioned, I think showed the peak of everything Purdue could be this season.
It's interesting you mentioned Darian Williams, because we were talking about LaJuan Watts kind of filling that role. Came off the bench, 13 minutes, 0 points on 0 shots. That's not Darian Williams. So with him not playing that role and them going too big with Toppin and Mamgoye, there's just very little playmaking outside of Christian Anderson, because Tyree Bryan, and Donovan Atwell are mostly spot-up shooters. So with LaJuan Watts not playing well, it really just even further limits their pathways to points. And then for Purdue, the last thing I want to mention is we've been skeptical, both of us, about the front court rotation for Purdue, but Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson, especially Clough, was awesome in this game, because Texas Tech did go with the 2 big. Clough was able to chill in the paint and be a giant human, which he's really good at doing. And he's a beast on the boards. So when Purdue plays a team that doesn't really have that four men that's spacing them out, which Delon Watts was not doing and was barely on the floor for, that's huge advantage Purdue.
Clough seems to have found his footing. I think that was one of my big takeaways from this too, is that Clough looks comfortable. He did in the Memphis game as well, all Bahamar, really. Clough looked very comfortable with Purdue. We talked after the Bama game that Braden Smith being a little bit more aggressive, scoring the ball, kind of opened up the offense a little bit and made it so the two bigs worked a little bit more. I do think Purdue has found something, or at least settled into a bit of a rhythm with this big man rotation and how to make it work offensively. Again, it helps when you're making not like all your threes. I know the statistics weren't all the threes, but it felt like
57%.
Yeah, it felt like all the threes. That certainly helps. But yeah, just a really good showing for Purdue. We had talked about Arizona last week because they just beat UConn in the resume, potentially being the number one team in the country. Did Purdue shut the door on anybody else being number one in your mind?
The thing with Purdue is it's just so hard to get them off their game. They have the most experienced floor general in the country and one of the best inside scorers with a defense that fits their personnel very well and one of the best coaches. It's just the level of ups and downs of this is not a roller coaster. This is a straight line drive. They're just chucking ahead and they'll have their bumps, but you're not going to get 5-game losing streak or really struggle on a couple in a row. They're going to play well or they're going to get outplayed.
Yeah, I think the number one conversation is very interesting for this week. Long term, Purdue keeps us up. They're getting the one seed in the Midwest no matter what, and that's what they want.
Yeah,
right? Like big picture, Purdue will be fine. And it's nice for the fans, nice for the team, everyone to be number one. Purdue's going to stay number one. There's a reason for them to fall off in the AP poll. But yeah, just they're it, man. They're it. And that was an impressive performance from them. What else did we see this weekend? Let's get some rapid takeaways. Again, not a lot of super marquee games this weekend because that's coming this week. We'll get to some of those high profile matchups here in a second, but there were a lot of really good games, a lot of really good performances. What caught your eye?
We're just fresh off of Virginia's loss to Butler in the finals of their tournament in their ballroom in West Virginia. And it's a little tough because this was a ballroom and they are Virginia's first two games against power conference competition against Northwestern, who they barely escaped, and they were down most of that game. And then Butler, where they couldn't come back late. They led by 1 point for 30 seconds. That was their only lead. The shot making there is a little bit concerning to me. Malik Thomas is very, very good. But outside of him, they have the two Euro bigs that are solid, not spectacular. And the rest of the guard room has just not been productive in their big games. Dallin Hall looks lost offensively. Obviously, he's a passer, but the ball's not getting in the hoop. Jakari White looks small, and they don't want to play him because of the defense. Sam Lewis, not a playmaker whatsoever. And then Chance Mallory's, an impressive and impactful freshman, but he's 5'10", and he has his limitations in that regard, though he is very Kihei Clark-esque, which is a lot of fun for Virginia fans, I'm sure. I'm not sure if Virginia is a top 25 team if they can't get one of Dallin Hall or Jakari White to be a really impactful starter.
Yeah, I think you saw Mallory was 4-13 in this game. He's been really good for Virginia this season, but we have seen the efficiency not always be there, which is tough when you are a sub 6 foot guard who's learning how to go against this level of competition and finish inside around the size that you're going to face, particularly against other power conference teams. The other side of this too is that Butler might be good. Finley Bizjack is looking like, I don't know if he's a first team all Big East guy, but certainly the best player on this team, certainly an all Big East caliber player. Again, we can argue first team, second team, and I don't know if the Big East does one of those 10-person first teams or what have you. But he's looked like one of the better players in the Big East. And we talked on our last episode about how the door's wide open in the Big East. St. John's, we'll get to them in a second, still hold them in higher regard. UConn hold in higher regard. Marquette's been struggling. Creighton's been struggling and is now going to be without Jackson McAndrew for the rest of the year. There's a world where Butler steps in there and is the third or fourth best team in the Big East. I'm required to mention that Georgetown is the third best team in the Big East. but like Butler is the other team in that kind of mix that has showed positive signs at any point this season, really. And so this is a great chance, I think, for them in a kind of got to have it year for Thad Matta to take advantage of that opening in the Big East.
Yeah, well, they're almost out of non-conference games. They only have a couple left. Boise State and Northwestern are their only two tests left, and then yeah, it's Big East play where they're going to win a lot of games. They might not finish too much higher above 500, but they're much better than the bottom of this conference, and they should be able to put together at least Admata's best season in his second stint in Butler, which he has not finished better than 9-11 yet in his second stint.
Oh. Where else do you want to go? What else caught your eye?
Yeah, Providence, Penn State was ugly. We're talking about teams that are going to compete in their respective conferences. I don't know if those two teams are going to be them. Just Providence, like they got pieces, but the team, at least right now, doesn't make a lot of sense. And I'm not certain that the coach of that team is the guy to, meld a team together. And then for Penn State, they are a test case probably, or I don't want to say a failed test case quite yet, but we're trending towards there. But what happens when you don't do your work early? Like their team 1 month into the transfer portal, into the offseason was rough, and they scrambled to get overseas guys that hadn't yet been scooped up, and it shows. They're young, they're inexperienced, they're not physical. Freddie DeLeon and Caden Mingo are basically the only two guys that are impactful players on this team. And when Mingo had an awful game like he did against Providence, and it's just DeLeon, there's just not enough to get done, which most power conference teams beat Providence with the way that they were shooting and the shots that they were taking on Saturday.
Yeah. It was, I'm surprised you went there because I did not want to think about that game anymore after that game ended. But yeah.
It was better than San Fran, Minnesota. That was also a gross one.
Yes. I wanted to go to the Louisville-Cincinnati game because that game was also a little bit yucky, kind of by design from Cincinnati's standpoint, which I think is how Cincinnati is going to have to play, and I think they deserve some credit for getting Louisville to play down to that and imposing their style on Louisville. But I also got to give Louisville a ton of credit because they handled it and went to the place where really good teams go the second half, like the fourth quarter, the last 10 minutes of the game, elevated their game in a way that you see all great teams do. And that was good to see from Louisville, see them get tested and see them extend out and put some space between them and Cincinnati, which there was a chance that would have been the first unranked, overranked upset that we've had this season. We have not had any of those. Do you put any stock in that to this point? We're at Feast Week now, and there's been no ranked teams that have fallen to unranked teams.
No, because I don't care about AP poll rankings. Like, there's two things in college basketball that everyone cares about that I don't care about, and both of them might be hot takes. I don't care what you're ranked in the AP poll, and I don't care how many points per game you have as a player. Neither of those things matter to me, really at all. And so AP poll, no. But the fact is, Cincinnati is going to be a tough out, especially at home this year, and Louisville is finding ways to win when they're not hitting 35-40% of their threes is a great sign for their future for the rest of the year.
100%. I think we may need to have a conversation about points per game at a later date because you do need to score to win games.
Yeah, but
part of the prerequisite.
The actual physical number of points per game a player scores does not matter.
Number plus efficiency.
It's your usage and your efficiency. It's another conversation for another day.
Part of the equation. I got you. Part of the equation. Well, let's go ahead and start looking ahead to the coming week. We're going to spend a lot of time looking at some of the major matchups with Players Era because that is and has become the marquee event of Feast Week. There's also a very nice UNC Michigan State game on Thanksgiving Day that we're going to get to. But I wanted to get your thoughts on Maui first because this is a down Maui field, particularly compared to last year's Maui Invitational. And there's been lots of conversations about what the future of the Maui Invitational might be or might look like. But this is still a prestigious event. Got some pretty good teams playing in this that I think have a chance to prove themselves. So what are the main things you're looking at from Maui?
Yeah, it should be interesting. Obviously, one of the 4 games on the opening day on Monday involves Chaminade. So that one for Washington State, you'd hope is a win. They're very banged up. So if there's a game where Chaminade has a chance, it might be that one. The field's not great. But we'll learn about it. We'll learn stuff about teams. NC State going to get tested a couple of times. USC coming off that insane game against Troy. We'll see how they respond. And they're playing a Boise State team that has already lost to a team in Hawaii, not physically in Hawaii, but a Hawaii-based team. So you never know. And then Texas. Bad loss to Duke, not particularly close on opening week. And then they've played nothing but 330th ranked teams or worse since. So we're going to learn something when they're not playing a top 5 or a bottom 30 team. Are they going to be competitive this year? This is our first real test for Texas. And outside of that, I don't have a whole lot more for you. Soft Maui rims. Yes. That's always a thing. So be prepared to overreact to some offensive performances that may not be that real.
Yeah, last year we had an 0-3 UConn run in Maui, and we had Memphis making the title game and going toe-to-toe with Auburn. So funny things happen in Maui. I'm glad you brought up the USC Troy game because that was insanity. We did not get to talk about it because we did not wait to record until 2 a.m. on Thursday night / Friday morning. That was just not something we were going to do. But Victor Valdez for Troy wrote about him in the Rauf report that's up on basketunderreview.com, which you can read if you subscribe. Again, subscribe to Basket Under Review. I really liked him a lot. That's a team and a player to kind of file away for when February, March come back around and you start to see what Troy and Valdez and them are doing. To me, Mount Invitational this year is a proving ground for NC State, Texas, and USC. That's what this is. All three of those teams have internal hopes of being like a second weekend team, internal hopes of competing for conference titles or being in the conference title mix. How realistic you think that is for any of the three is very much up to you. But internally, that's what the expectations are. Right? All three of these programs see themselves as top 25 caliber teams. They haven't had chances to prove that yet, right? Musselman at USC is trying to rebound from last year, and they think that they're much better. Sean Miller, his first year at Texas, you're trying to make your mark. Will Wade, first year at NC State, you're trying to turn the preseason hype into during the season production and wins. Only one of them is going to come out of this feeling really good about themselves because the depth of the field is not there, right? UNC and Michigan State both lost games. One of them lost 2 games last year, Maui, and both left feeling okay about themselves because of how strong Maui was, right? If you do not win this Maui, if you're one of those three, you are not going to feel as good about yourself as you are coming into this tournament with, right? So in terms of stakes, it's hard to put like real stakes on a feast week multi-team event, right? It's not there. But I do think there is something to be said from a perception standpoint that the winner of this will have some substance behind the hope or the hype that each of these three teams came into the season with.
And all this to say, Seton Hall is going to – no, it's probably not going to happen. But you never know what would be – I do hope that involves Seton Hall is that they lose to NC State and that USC beats Boise State so that we get NC State USC. That's the matchup I want to see in this tournament. Those are the two best teams on paper in the bracket. They play in the semifinals. If they were to square off or they both were to win their opening games on Monday, that's what I want to watch.
Yeah, I think you're looking for, if you're a college basketball fan and if you're somebody associated with the Mount Invitational, you want NC State and USC to play in the semis, and you want the winner of that to play Texas in the championship game. Yeah, that's the path there. Let's get to the first Players Era game that we're going to talk about. St. John's and Iowa State are going to face off at Monday at 4:30 on True TV. Got to work those True TV muscles a couple months earlier than we typically do. Defense first game. I don't think it's a stretch to say that this game might be a little bit ugly, given the way that both of these teams like to play. What's the biggest key in your mind that will determine who wins?
Well, Iowa State's number 1 in the country in turnover rate. And we've spent months talking about how St. John's doesn't have guards. And then when St. John's played Alabama and Dylan Darling didn't play, Rick Pitino went as far as to say after the game that Dylan Darling wouldn't have been good in that game because of Alabama's guards. So we're at a crossroads here. The only guard on St. John's that can handle the ball as a true point guard is Dylan Darling.
Yeah.
But Dylan Darling's not a good defender, and he'd have to guard Taman Lipsey. So what happens here? Does St. John's go big? Did they turn it over 25 times? Do they go smaller, a worse defensive lineup and allow Iowa State to score at will? We know who is going to play for Iowa State, and we don't know who's going to play for St. John's. This is going to either be a big Iowa State win or a Rick Pitino masterclass. I don't want to bet against Rick Pitino, but to me, if I were to guess, I'd probably say Iowa State win.
Yeah, this event is going to tell us a lot about what St. John's is going to look like moving forward. Because you and I, as we've talked about with St. John's, do they just lean in and go ultra big for the rest of the year? And it's like, you know what, this is who we are. This is our best guys. Let's roll with it and figure it out. Or do they keep trying to figure out the guards that work for them, maybe find a combo or a couple guys that do work and roll with that? You're going to get tested. And as you mentioned, Iowa State being as good as they are as good as they are at forcing turnovers, if you have a guard you can rely on, you're going to find that out in this game because they're going to handle that pressure. And Tamin Lipsey might be the best perimeter defender in the country.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see from that standpoint. But I also, from the reverse perspective, St. John's should be able to speed up Iowa State's perimeter. Like Iowa State wants to play a little bit slower. I know last year they played faster than they normally do, but they've kind of scaled it back a little bit this year because they don't have the athletes they did last year. Having a healthy Tamin Lipsey does help, and it's his play this year compared to last year is night and day. Like last year, he couldn't lift his arm above his shoulder. He had the first step wasn't there because all the groin and different issues. He looks healthy this year, and he's taken his game to another level.
I will caveat that they have played Fairleigh Dickinson, Grambling State, Stonehill, and then Mississippi State, who looks awful. And they have the 96th ranked defense in KenPom right now. Mississippi State does. So very much the first real test for Iowa State.
Yeah.
And that should be a real fun one. Probably the one I'm most looking forward to on Monday. Actually, that's a lie because that's a lie. That's a lie.
Are you more looking forward to Gonzaga, Alabama?
Yeah, that's the one I'm looking forward to.
Because that game is Monday night at 9:30 on TNT. While St. John's, I would say, is probably more of a defensive battle. This one is an offensive battle. We joked with Bama, Illinois, that was going to be first to 90, which it ended up being. This one might be another first to 90 matchup as well. At least first to 80, let's say. We'll tone it down a little bit. First to 80. But what are you looking for as the key in this game?
I don't know what Alabama is going to do with Braden Huff and Graham Ike. I don't know what they're going to do. Aiden Sherrill is in constant foul trouble, and Nate Oates doesn't want to play his backups. And playing 6'10", 220, 205, 6'10", 205 Keaton Bristow is not going to work at the 5 here. It worked against Illinois. It's not going to work against Gonzaga. Like, if Aiden Sherrill's in foul trouble here, which, like, the odds are he will, he commits 6.4 fouls per 40 minutes, then you are just going down the list of bigs, and that is a problem. Now, on the other hand, Alabama is going to make Gonzaga's guards beat them whenever possible, and that's still a question mark. They played really well in the Creighton game in a similar drop coverage scheme that Alabama is going to provide, but that was in the kennel, and that was largely fueled by their defense forcing turnover after turnover. It's not going to happen with Alabama. Alabama is going to get what they want offensively. They're going to try to get as many switches for LeBaron Fallon and Aiden Holloway on Gonzaga's bigs. And really it's going to come down to which unit is better, Alabama's bigs or Gonzaga's guards, because your weakest link in this game is going to get you a win.
I think we're going to learn a lot about Gonzaga's backcourt for that reason. We've talked about Gonzaga's floor being higher than, at least I thought it was. I won't subject you into thinking that maybe they were in for a more down year this year. I think the floor for Gonzaga is much higher, largely because of the play of EK and Huff in the front court. And also you've gotten really solid performances from everybody on the backcourt and on the perimeter throughout the entirety of the season. There hasn't really been a down game for them collectively. If somebody's had a down game, somebody else has picked it up. If they're able to hang with Bama on the perimeter or frustrate Alabama, get them out of their game a little bit, knock Fallon off course, knock Wrightsell off course, knock Holloway off course, then I think we start talking about this Gonzaga team very differently. Like then it becomes, this is a team that should be in the mix for KenPom number 1 that might be Final Four caliber good. Because you throw in that caliber of backcourt with EK and Huff in the front court, then you're really cooking with something. But if you're Alabama, like they've proven themselves. this point, I don't know if we're going to think any differently about Alabama if they lose this game. I think the stakes, again, as much as there are feast week stakes, is on Gonzaga to potentially prove themselves as being like, oh yeah, no, we're really, really good this year.
And I will say they have a huge depth advantage. Alabama's bench is a little questionable, even with Bristow back, and Gonzaga's bench is the best in the country. So that should be a huge edge. Are you surprised that they're 14 spots apart? 14 spots apart in KenPom?
Yes and no, because they are not that far apart, I don't feel like, in terms of actual team ability. But the way things are early in the season, when you can run up the score against lesser teams, and Bama has challenged themselves the way they've had, it lends itself to a little bit more analytical disparity when there are so few data points as there are at this point in the season. But I don't view these teams as being 14 spots apart in the nation. No.
It'll be interesting.
Does it surprise you?
I mean, I personally think that Gonzaga is the better team. Maybe not 14 spots better, but I think at least the order's right.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get to that in our picks section, which we're both coming off of winning weeks. We're doing pretty good. Yeah. Let's get to Tuesday, the Players Era. There is a doubleheader on TNT that should be pretty fun. First one's going to be Houston and Tennessee at 6:00. Another defense first matchup with some offensive upside thanks to some 5-star freshmen. Nate Ament on the Tennessee side, Kingston Flemings, Chris Senac on the Houston side. What are you excited to watch in this game?
I just want to quickly shout out JoJo Tugler. There are thousands of Division I players in the country. He is top 12 in steal rate and block rate of all players in the entire country. That's insane. Like, Matisse Thybulle could only dream of doing that. Insane. I don't care if he can't score and he turns it over too much and fouls all the time. Absurd defensive player. This is probably the Nate Ament game, or not the Nate Ament game. What I mean by that is Nate Ament is the ceiling for Tennessee, and you need your ceiling to beat Houston. Houston's as steady as they come, even with them being so freshman-driven. But even if Tennessee crashes the offensive glass, which they will, they've grabbed 50% of their misses so far this year, granted against no power conference teams. But Houston and the way that they play defense, they're susceptible to offensive rebounds. Tennessee will get second chances. But if Nate Ament is not hitting shots, if he has a game like he did in the exhibition slate against Duke, and Houston's running away with this basketball game because Tennessee cannot keep up if it's just Jacoby Gillespie and offensive rebounds.
JoJo Tugler's eventual, like, Kevin Looney NBA career arc, where he's a multi-time champion, just doing all the dirty work and being a high-level defender, is going to be something fun to watch. I'm going to go the other side for Houston, because I agree with everything you're saying about Nate Ament in Tennessee. Like, that's the key for them. From the Houston standpoint, you also have a freshman in Kingston Flemings, who they are relying on more than I think anybody thought they would. Maybe anybody outside of that building thought they would. I went on Bart Torvik's little player sorter, which is a phenomenal tool. If you stack up Kingston Fleming start to his season and compare it to anybody for Houston from the Kelvin Sampson era. Now, given those guys were over full seasons that included American Conference play, Big 12 play, Kingston Fleming just this, the first month of the season, his analytical numbers clear anybody else that Sampson's had at Houston. That's going to come back a little bit. And if it is going to come back a good bit and it's fluky, it's going to happen against Tennessee's defense. If he continues to play close to the level that he's been playing at against this kind of defense, I think we leave Players Era just with the Kingston Fleming's hype train in total overdrive. Like, this is a great chance for him. He did it against Auburn. He does it again against Tennessee and other games that Houston's going to have at Players Era. Then I think we're looking at Houston having one of, like, the handful of best guards in the country, which has been the key for all the long runs that they've made, is having a guard of that caliber. I'm interested to see that matchup, how he handles Tennessee's defense.
It would also be nice if, like, Milos Uzan was scoring.
Yes.
He's been really, really poor efficiency-wise scoring the basketball, and that's just like a scary thought. Like, if Milos Uzan is like 80% of last year Milos Uzan, with the way that Sharp's been shooting it, with Kingston Flemings being the on-ball guy, and then just all the defensive and rebounding options they have in the front court, Houston may just be as good as last year, very possibly.
Yeah, I think too. Like Uzan and Sharp came back expecting to be the guys, and both of them seem to be okay with Kingston Flemings being the guy, but they have to adjust. And I think we're seeing some of that adjustment because Uzan was so ball dominant last year, and he still kind of has to be his most effective. We're seeing them kind of, I think, find some chemistry with Flemings, which if it's not clicking all cylinders, Tennessee's defense is going to take advantage of that. We'll see.
What's interesting is Flemings is actually just fifth on Houston in shot percentage. He takes the fifth most shots on Houston's team. It's still behind Uzan, Sharp, Tugler, and Cenac. So more of a facilitator, but electric scorer when he goes up with it.
I would be surprised if he ends the season at fifth in shot percentage for Houston.
We'll see.
We'll see. After that, it's going to be Michigan and Auburn at 8:30 on TNT. Should be a fun game. You know, Auburn's had a couple of opportunities, particularly the one against Houston, slipped through their fingers in terms of a notable victory to start the Stephen Pearl era. Michigan hasn't lost yet. They've had some shaky performances, though. What are you hoping to see from either Michigan or Auburn that'll tell you something about either team after this game?
Yeah, Michigan has not yet put together a competent offensive performance against the power conference team. They're really 0 for 2. They didn't hit 1 point per possession in either Wake Forest or TCU games. That's a problem because Auburn might not be as good defensively necessarily in terms of aggression as Wake Forest and TCU, that are two teams that are going to be one of the more aggressive groups that Michigan will play all year. But when Michigan has to swing the ball, when they can't play one-on-one iso ball and they're settling for 3-pointers off of swings, they're not a productive team. And that's a problem. You have to be able to play in multiple ways to win basketball games if you're going to be a high level team. Obviously, defensively, they're giant. Defensively, they have Morez Johnson and Dai Mara, and that's immediately an amazing top 10 defensive team, and they've proven to be that. With Auburn, it just depends if Keyshawn Hall plays. Interestingly, they're way better with Keyshawn Hall, but the defense is still better without him. So Auburn really becomes a defensive unit if Keyshawn Hall is not able to return from the ankle injury, or lower leg injury he suffered in that Houston game. So we'll see which version of Auburn we get. Offensive juggernaut with Keyshawn Hall or defensive minded with Sebastian Williams-Adams.
Yeah, if he plays the Keyshawn Hall, Yaxel Landenborg against each other, I think could be interesting. Just because they have the ability to defend each other with size and they kind of match each other quickness as well. Like that could be a fun individual matchup to watch in that game if Keyshawn Hall plays. Mm-hmm. Well, let's get to that Thanksgiving matchup that we talked about between UNC and Michigan State. 4:30 on Thursday on Fox. It's part of the Fort Myers tip-off, but we just care that North Carolina and Michigan State are playing because this should be a really fun game. We have been skeptical of Michigan State up until last week because they just keep winning and keep handling business. They're going to look to do the same against a North Carolina team that does not have Seth Trimble as he recovers from the freak weight room accident, but still a talented North Carolina team nonetheless. And I think an interesting subplot to this is Caleb Wilson going up against Michigan State's front court and really North Carolina's front court, going up against Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper and the Michigan State front court that has been so good this season. To me, that's the biggest thing that I'm watching, the biggest storyline that I'm watching. Is it the same for you, or what else do you have your eye on?
Yeah, front court is the game here. Michigan State's not going to shoot as well as they did last time. I want to give a quick story. I was at Michigan State, Arizona 2 years ago, which was also a Thanksgiving Day game on Fox after the big NFL game. And Tom Izzo lost that one. And I was at the press conference after. And it was Thanksgiving afternoon. And Tom Izzo was just so sad that his team lost that basketball game. For Tom Izzo's sake, I hope they win this basketball game because I don't want Tom Izzo to be sad on Thanksgiving. I
do think the vibes around the team, even after a loss, are vastly different at this point this year than they were at this point last year. At this point last year, we had not discovered Chase Richardson yet being who Michigan State needed him to be. I think with the win over Kentucky and all that, he may be a little bit happier, even with the loss.
Yeah, it's Tom Izzo. Don't underestimate his sadness. He's an intense guy.
That is very true. What else? I cut you off, so I apologize. I know you had more on this. You were going into. So what else you got?
No, that was mostly it. Like both of these teams very low on guard depth. So if one of the front courts is way better than the other, Henry Visar is surprisingly good with physicality. He's going to get a lot of physicality. And then obviously Caleb Wilson is the big test, like you mentioned.
Yeah, because Michigan State is more tested to this point. I know UNC has the win over Kansas, right? But Michigan State's beat Arkansas. They've beaten Kentucky on a neutral court. North Carolina doesn't have Seth Trimble, and Seth Trimble should be back for the start of conference play. I think they've circled like the end of December as a time frame for him to be back. I don't know if that's aggressive or conservative or what have you. That's the time they're kind of looking at. If North Carolina's front court wins this game for them, or at least wins the battle against Michigan State's front court, that bodes really well for North Carolina because Michigan State's front court has carried them to both of those victories that we just mentioned. So that obviously bodes well for North Carolina. And if the backcourt does okay without Seth Trimble, if Kind Evans steps up, if Luka Bogovic steps up, you get a couple other guys off the bench stepping up, that bodes really well for North Carolina as well because Michigan State's going to make you work, going to make you execute in the half court. I will feel fine about Michigan State even if a loss. Despite what Tom Izzo may say or feel afterwards, I will still feel okay about Michigan State after a loss. I don't know. I think North Carolina loss would make me maybe not reconsider how I feel about them, but I think how they would lose would tell you something about where they're at from a ceiling and floor standpoint right now.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah. Let's get into picking some of these games. As we mentioned, we both went 3-1 last week. We both picked Louisville to win. Got that. Both picked BYU to win. Got that. I had Purdue winning Baha Mar. You had Clemson winning the Charleston Classic. So here we are sitting 3-1. I'm 14-10 on the season. You are 15-9.
Let's go.
Winning weeks, winning totals. We like to see this. Let's start with the players era. We may pick a Maui winner here at the end, just maybe as a tiebreaker for the week. But St. John's, Iowa State. Who you got?
Let's go Iowa State.
Yeah, I'm going to go Iowa State too. Gonzaga or Alabama?
I'll go Gonzaga. I think you're going to go Alabama, though.
I am going to go Alabama. I am a sucker for guards and shooting. Just who I am.
They got him.
Yeah, they do. Houston, Tennessee.
Houston.
I'm going to go Houston as well. I will always trust Kelvin Sampson team. Always. Michigan or Auburn?
Michigan. I'm assuming no Keyshawn Hall, but we'll see.
I'm going to go Michigan as well, even if Keyshawn Hall plays. I think the better days of Michigan are coming pretty soon in terms of their way they've played. Then UNC or Michigan State?
I'm going North Carolina here.
I'm going to go North Carolina as well. Concerns me that we've picked 4 of these exactly the same.
Well, there's one that we had to. Everyone's tuning to Gonzaga, Alabama, not for the game, just to see which one of us gets
just to see. But let's look at Maui because we've talked about Maui. Who do you think wins? Who do you think wins the Maui Invitational?
I think that NC State is a really good basketball team that still hasn't hit their peak. They might not hit it here, but I'm going to go with them.
I think NC State has probably more variance than both Texas and USC do. I think they're also considerably better than both Texas and USC, excuse me. And I know NC State or USC would have to beat one or the other and then potentially Texas in the title game. So the road's easier for Texas. But I'm going to go NC State as well. I think I trust them a little bit more at this point.
All right, Gonzaga and Alabama for all the marbles this week then.
For all the marbles. That'll be one of the games of the week. Plenty of good games here on Feast Week. Day basketball. Time off of work. What more could you want? We will be back to break it all down here weekend under review, take you through all those games, all the other big takeaways from across the week, Feast Week, college basketball. Talk to you then.